Hello everyone, thank you very much. Thanks so much for having me here. I might stand up because my voice is going to go weird if I sit down in that nice comfortable chair. So I'm from The Body Shop, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about corporate or brand activism. Does everyone know The Body Shop? Put up your hands if you've not heard of The Body Shop. Okay, good, I'm starting for a decent base then. Let's go back to 1976. So there was a young woman who had two small children. Her husband loved horses, and he decided to go on a many-month trip to South America, riding a horse up and down. And she needed to work to feed her family, and she and her husband were already entrepreneurs. So she found a small shop in Brighton and started selling handmade, hand-mixed beauty products made with natural ingredients. And that was the beginning of The Body Shop. So that was Anita Roddick. And very, very quickly, that company grew. In 1978, started opening its first stores abroad. In the early 1980s, it floated on the stock market. And she did some amazing things with that business, not just in the kinds of products that she created and the kind of loyalty that she created from selling those products, but because she wanted to do business differently. She was a very opinionated young woman who wanted to do things in a completely different way and didn't like the beauty industry, despite being in it, and wanted to see if she could shake things up. So I think she was in many ways the original disruptor. She did a lot of the stuff she did to begin with out of necessity and creativity. So the famous dark green Body Shop colour, she painted the walls green because the walls in the shop that she could afford were mouldy, and the dark green was the only colour that she could get to cover the mould. It's not because she was an eco-warrior from the beginning. But she really, it's that different mindset. She treated her staff differently. She educated them on all sorts of different things. She wanted to speak honestly about what was in the products and what they would do. She didn't say, this is going to make you look very young. She said, this is going to feel great on your skin. And that was completely different in the 1970s. The environmentalist movement was quite nascent at the time. Greenpeace had only really just formed a few years before. But she started to think about where the products came from and whether they could keep coming from those places, what she could do from an environmental and social point of view. And there were just so many firsts and so many different ways of doing business. And one of those was intrinsic to actually how she bought the ingredients and some of the things that we sold at The Body Shop. And one of them, and this became known as community trade. Back in 1989, she launched what she called Trade Not Aid, which pretty much does what it says on the tin. And that was working directly with communities, sometimes in developing countries, sometimes not, to buy the ingredients and making sure that we were giving them a fair price. And we got to know them, and we were actually having a genuine relationship with the people from whom we were buying the ingredients. So that's still a program that we have now, and that's very much intrinsic to the business. So it's not an add-on. And this is kind of the difference about how The Body Shop's set up. It's not, and lots of companies do this and do this really, really successfully. This is how we do business, and then we'll do some charity work over here that's a bit different. It might be a bit of an offset to the other stuff that we do. This is genuinely how we trade. And we've learned lots of different things in the way, and some of those partnerships haven't worked, and some of them probably didn't end beautifully. If you read Anita's book, Body and Soul, she lays it all out. But there are lots of organisations that we're still working with 30 years later. And I was lucky enough to go to one of the ones we've been working with for a long time in Ghana this year. That's where we buy our shea butter. And it was an incredible experience. I mean, these are women who have been working with Body Shop, who remember Anita. It's a part of the world where you have to be welcomed into these villages, which are quite remote parts of northern Ghana, by the men. So the men have a certain amount of power in the community, but we do all our business directly with the women. Shea is known as a women's crop. So then the financial power that the women have because of this direct relationship we have completely changes their society and community. And they have a voice in the community now because of that financial relationship. And that was incredible. And it was great to be able to listen to their stories and then for us to be able to tell those stories to the wider world. So that's something I'm really proud of working with, and we're expanding that on a regular basis. Just this year, we launched our community trade recycled plastic, and I've got two of my colleagues here today who came out to India with us earlier this year, where we're in Bangalore, working directly on the ground. And we work with NGOs quite often so that we can set a fair price for what we buy, and it's the stability of that price too that makes a difference. So people will know they're going to be paid this amount over a long period of time, which doesn't usually happen when you're trading commodities. You don't know when you're going to be paid or what you're going to be paid. But if they know they're going to get this price over the year and over the next 5 years, then it makes a big difference to how they can live their lives. And then campaigning. So in 1985, when the business was fairly well established, Anita launched her first big campaign, this big international campaign, and it was called Save the Whale. It's pretty iconic. And it was with Greenpeace. And I believe it was the first time that Greenpeace had worked with a company. So that was the first time we did it, and it was really quite different. She used the store windows, she used the communications, she used the vans that would drive up and down the country with her products. She'd use the side of them to advertise the campaigns, not advertise what she was selling, but advertise what we were talking about and the difference that we were trying to make in the world. So we've been campaigners ever since then. And Steve mentioned the Forever Against Animal Testing campaign, which we finished last year with 8.3 million signatures to try and end animal testing in cosmetics, because, believe it or not, there are still 80% of countries in the world that don't have laws against animal testing, but that is changing slowly. But one of the reasons we were able to get 8.3 million signatures is because Anita Roddick started campaigning against animal testing in cosmetics in the late 80s. And at the time, everyone thought she was nuts. It was like, why would you berate your own industry for safety? Because testing on animals was the only way that people knew to test for safety. But what activism means is challenging the status quo. Do we have to do it like this? Is this the right way of doing it? How else could we do things? That's really what activism means. And then finding a solution and being tenacious enough, sticking at it to make sure that you can make that long-term change. That for us is really what activism is about. We have a new campaign launching next year, so I'm not going to tell you more about it other than watch this space, and we're working with some very brilliant creative people, some of whom work here on that campaign. I keep doing this. Okay, and then I just wanted to tell you a little bit more. So in 2006, Anita sold the Body Shop to L'Oreal. A lot of people were quite shocked by that move. Unfortunately, she died the following year, so I think quite a lot of knowledge and the way of doing things was then lost. I joined the Body Shop 4 years ago, so L'Oreal owned us then. And I have to say, there was a lot of really good stuff about L'Oreal, and they allowed us to launch that Forever Against Animal Testing campaign, even though other companies who do sell in China and therefore are subject to the mandatory animal testing laws might not have allowed us to do that, but they did. And anyway, then L'Oreal put us up for sale in 2017, and halfway through 2017, so almost exactly 2 years ago, we were bought by a brilliant Brazilian company called Natura, which was the first publicly listed B Corp. Can I just have a show of hands on who's heard of a B Corp? B Corporation? Oh, great. It's an enlightened crowd. So B Corp certification shows that you've got the highest standards of environmental and social impact in the world in a positive way. And to become a B Corp, you have to do something really significant at the beginning. You have to change your business status. In England, we call it the Articles of Association, to make sure that you give equal value to profit, people, and planet. So at Natura, that means that the most senior executives only get a bonus if they've done well financially, but also environmentally and socially. That's a really big deal, and that's quite different from a lot of big businesses. So Natura & Co is the name of the group. They also own the Australian brand Aesop, and are in the process, subject to regulatory approval, to buy Avon as well. So that will make us into a much bigger player in that world. And they are absolutely brilliant to work with and extremely supportive of the way we do business. Oh. We'll learn this eventually, probably when I finish. Yeah, that's my last slide. So what activism means to us. I think I talked to you before a little bit about conviction, so an idea that you need to challenge the status quo, do things differently, look at it. Maybe it's not changing the status quo, maybe it's looking at it and thinking that this is the right way to act, but it's being able to question things and say, is this the right way we should be doing business, we should be acting. And then if you don't think it is, it's having that conviction to try and change things. And some of the principles that we have with activism are be inclusive. So we say that we're a feminist brand. That word, I think, frightens some people, and some people, both men and women, think, well, I can't be part of that because I'm not a feminist. For us, feminism means equality between the genders, and that means that everybody can get involved in that. And that's, we want all of the men in our business to get behind that, all of the women and all of the trans people in our business to get behind that. And it's absolutely about bringing everyone along, even if we're doing a campaign that is about empowering women and girls, absolutely men are part of that story. And another way of being inclusive and making it into communications and campaigns that everyone can get involved in is using a little bit of humour. Anita Roddick had a great quote, which is, we tackle serious issues, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. And it can be a massive turn-off if people are just doing very, very worthy communications. And these guys at Mother know that so well. A bit of humour is a great way into a big, meaty conversation often. The other thing we think about is working with experts. So we've done campaigns on violence in the home. Even when we do animal testing, we don't know all the answers. So we need to speak to experts. They may be NGOs, they may be academics, they may be different sorts of people to help inform us. So we're really talking about something sensibly and in an educated and informed way. And I guess the other one, which is quite a serious one to end on, is looking about making long-term change. So I talked before about some corporates, some businesses saying we're going to do this nice philanthropic work on the side. That might be about donating and then walking away. It's not necessarily a long-term sustainable change. Trying to actually change legislation in some cases, or change attitudes, or change behaviours, that's the kind of change that we want to make. And I hope we do it forever. Thank you.